Hey guys, Alex here with Serious Goose Games. Welcome back to our Unity Tactics RPG tutorial. Last time we set up a movement range highlighting system that uses Dijkstra's algorithm to figure out which tiles are within range. Today we're going to add unit selections so that we can control multiple units and move them around the map. So the first thing we're going to do is right-click in our hierarchy. We're going to create an empty game object named Player. Now the way I want to set this up is not so much like Fire Emblem has it, where you have player phase, then enemy phase, maybe an allied phase. I want this to be more like Advance Wars, where you could have different factions. Advance Wars, I think, has up to 4, but you could have as many as you wanted, and the system will be robust enough to be able to handle as many players as you want to add. One of those players will be a human, but the information and the logic and all of the stuff involved in the player will be the same across them. Next, we're going to right-click in our project panel in our scripts folder. We're going to create a new mono behavior script. We're going to name it Player. Once you create that, double-click to open it up. First thing we're going to do in here is get rid of our update method. We don't need it. And now we're going to add a couple of references. So the first one is going to be a public static unit called selected unit. Because this is a turn-based tactics game, you don't really need to have more than one unit selected. It's not an RTS. So we only ever need one unit at a time. Next, we're going to grab a reference to our grid manager, public grid manager, called grid manager. And then inside start, we're going to grab that reference to our grid manager. So grid manager is equal to find any object by type, grid manager. Next, we're going to go to our grid manager and we're going to add a helper function that's going to allow us to get a tile from our map. So we're going to do public tile, get tile, and we're going to pass in a vector to int position. And we're going to return map position.x, position.y. Now let's go back to our player and we're going to add a method here called public void change selected unit. And inside here, we're going to set our selected unit to be equal to the unit that we didn't pass in. So as an argument, we're going to pass in unit, and then selected unit is going to be equal to unit. Then we're going to grab our grid manager. And we're going to call the highlight move range. And then grab our grid manager .map or grid manager .get tile. And we're going to pass in our unit .grid position and our unit.movement range. So now we actually need to select our unit. So we're going to go to our unit script. We're going to start out by implementing the event system namespace. So using Unity engine event systems. And then we're going to select our units the same way we select our tiles. So next to mono behavior, we're going to call I pointer down handler. And now we're going to get a reference to our player. So public player. We're going to call it owner. This is the player that owns the unit. Now at the bottom, we're going to do the on pointer down interface. So public void on pointer down. We'll pass in pointer event data called event data. And inside here, it's going to be owner dot change selected unit to this. So with that done, we're going to change a couple things in our tile script. Now, if you're using Visual Studio, this will be nice and easy. If you're using something else, you're going to have to copy and paste. But for those using Visual Studio, if you highlight all of this code, so our if statement, if selected tile, all the way down to change color, and you right click, you can go to quick actions and refactorings, and you can extract a method. And we're going to name this method select tile. You can see that created a separate method called select tile. If you don't have Visual Studio or your IDE that you're using doesn't have that function, you can just type this out. You can copy and paste the code into this new method, and it will still work. Now we're going to change this horrendous line of code and replace it with some if statements. So if player.selected unit, and if we're in the move range, then we're going to do player.selected unit.move to. We're going to do transform.position and grid position. If we're not in move range, so else, then we're going to grab player.selected unit is equal to null. We're going to deselect our unit if we click on a tile that's outside of the movement range. So with that done, that is all of the code we need for today. So save all of it and head back to Unity. So inside here, let's select our player object in the hierarchy. We'll drag the player script onto it. And now we can duplicate our unit. Before I do that, I'm going to manually set its grid position. Eventually, we're going to have a function that will automatically do that for us. But for now, this will have to be manually done. So we can see that our position on the X is +1 or -1, and our Z is +1. Our grid position is going to be that number plus half of our map dimension. So our grid position on the X-axis is going to be -1 plus 5, because half our map width is 10. Half our map width is 5. So our grid position is going to be 4 on the X-axis and 6 on the Y-axis. So now I'm going to duplicate our unit, move him over a bit, probably here. Make sure we're dealing with whole numbers. So our position on the X is now 3. So our X will be 8 for grid position, and it'll stay 6 in the Y position. And then I'm going to create one more. You can create as many as you want. 3 just seems like a good number. So this third guy, 0 and -3. So X is going to be 5. Y is going to be 2. And the reason I'm manually setting the grid position is because if we were to select a unit and its grid position is still 0, 0, we're going to see the movement range appear over on the left side away from the unit. This will make sure that when we select the unit, it's actually going to be where the unit is. So once you do all that, save your scene and hit play. So now we have 3 units. If I select one, something breaks. And that's because we didn't assign a reference. So if we look at our units, we can see that it's requesting an owner, a player object reference, and we never assigned that. So I'm going to select all of our units. So I'll select the first one, hold down Shift, and select the last one. And then I'm going to drag our player object from the hierarchy into that slot in the inspector. Go ahead and save, and now we should be good to go. So now if I select a unit, we can see its range appears. If I click outside of the movement range, the unit is deselected. You can't tell because we didn't reset highlights. But if I select a new unit, the range moves around. Now, if I have a unit selected and I click inside the movement range, our unit moves to that new spot. And we can select a different unit and do the same thing. So we can now control multiple units on our grid. Now, you might notice that something's a little wonky with our movement range. It doesn't go away when we click or do anything like that. We are going to fix that later. That's not a permanent issue we're going to be suffering from. Another issue we have is I can move a unit so it's inside of another unit. So that's a problem. In the next video, we're going to introduce terrain types and modifier pathfinding to incorporate those. Instead of having this checkerboard pattern, we will have instead an actual, think of it like a height map of movement costs. That's all for today though, so if you like this video, hit like and don't forget to subscribe to keep up with the series. Comment below what kind of information should be displayed when you select a unit. I like to have the UI be relatively minimal, so maybe the unit name and their current health. A lot of information like movement and attack range can be displayed with other elements. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Alex with Serious Goose Games, and I'll see you in the next one.